This is episode 5 of Ruminate. Ruminate is a podcast about the opportunities and challenges that technology presents us with every day. I'm Rob Lewis, and with me, as always, is Mr. John Voorhees. Hi, John.
Hey, Rob. How you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm happy that my neighbours have just stopped trimming their hedge, because that was getting pretty noisy, and I was worried we weren't going to be able to record.
Yeah, we're going into that part of the year where it'll be dicey for me, too, because I had to go upstairs and turn off the heat, basically, because I'm in the basement, and once that furnace gets blowing, it blows very loud. So we can't go too long, because I might freeze to death.
So if you stop talking, I'll start to worry.
Yeah, it's not that bad here yet. It's the last couple of nights it's gotten down into the 30s, which is approaching freezing for those of you outside the U.S.
Thank you for the conversion there, because I really wasn't sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, I learned the metric system thanks to Jimmy Carter for 1 year, and then we gave up on it when Ronald Reagan became president. So that's your politics for the day. Excellent.
And on that note, let's not do any more politics. And how about you tell me about your phone, John?
Yeah. I just doxed myself on my age too, so there is that. I've loved my 6 Plus. It's great. I mean, it's always nice to have a fresh new battery. The battery life is insane. I've been using it on kind of a more regular basis. The first week or so, you have a new phone, you fiddle around, move the apps around, try various things out, try the new features, and I don't think it's a very good indicator of your battery life as a result. But the last week, I've been pretty busy at work, so as a result, I've been using the phone kind of in a more normal way, checking things from time to time, but not having it constantly out and fiddling with it. So it easily lasts the full day, which is great, because I used to get on the train, go to work, and arrive with like 40 or 50% battery and have to immediately plug it in. So that's been great. I've also been experimenting with the Apple Silicon case. I guess it was a couple Saturdays ago, and picked up the orange silicon case. I was going to get the orange watch band too, but I decided to hold off on that to see, just to hold off on it. It wasn't something I needed, and wasn't sure if the case would stick, and wanted to have a nice fashionable matching case and watch if the case stuck. And I'm still not sure whether the case is going to stick with me, because I like it. It definitely makes it more grippy, makes it easier. It makes me feel more secure in using it when I'm walking around outside and whatnot. But it is a little bit too grippy in terms of getting it in and out of a pocket. So since I think Wednesday or Thursday of last week, I've been just using it naked again, and it's causing a little bit of anxiety as I walk around down to the train in the morning. And I try to send a text or something, but I do really like. I've always used my phones without a case, and I do like using this phone without one too. I just do feel like it is a little hard to manage, just because of the size and the slipperiness of the case, of the outside of the phone. So
yeah, that's always been my concern with not having a case on, especially on iPhones and just modern smartphones in general, because they're these just huge slabs of glass. And I feel like, even if I've got just a not very good case on it, it might at least give it a little bit more protection. I haven't tried it without a case for a long time, because I just don't trust myself not to drop it and smash it. And of course, those get expensive when you start needing to replace the screen and stuff like that at the Apple Store.
Right. Also the one-handed use is an issue. I mean, it's an issue when you have to type. If I have both hands free and I'm walking down the street, it's not a big deal. But if I have something in one of my hands, it's nearly impossible to reach the other side of the screen, whether it's to tap an icon or just tap out a short message. I got to start using Siri more, I guess.
Yeah, I wonder what you're going to look like doing that on the train, but yeah, certainly
I know.
Well,
a lot of true. A lot of times I'm just by myself walking down the street, so I'll just look like a crazy person, and that's okay.
Yeah, that seems fine, John. So we have we spoke a little while ago about the Apple TV, and Plex was one of the apps I mentioned. There's a new app that I guess it hasn't been released yet, but the developers released some screenshots called Simplex, which is a Plex client for the Apple TV. It's kind of built with all the it's built with all the native components, and it kind of looks really nice. The developer's saying it will be released, assuming nothing goes wrong, on day one of the Apple TV App Store. So yeah, we'll pop a link in the show notes to that. But that looks like quite a nice option for playing Plex on the new Apple TV.
Yeah, I really like the look of this app. What's interesting to me is I'm surprised we saw this, just because I have not seen many Apple TV apps teased in the wild yet. We are now not even 2 weeks away. We're 13 days away from the end of the month. Apple TV was supposed to come by the end of October. If it comes out on, say, a Friday, the 30th, or Saturday, the 31st of October, you would think that developers would need to start submitting apps by sometime next week, maybe towards the end of the week. I have not heard any rumors of that. That's what we've been assuming, because I know my son Owen's been working on a game for the Apple TV. Haven't quite teased it yet because I'm still not 100% sure it's going to make it out day one. But yeah, it's been a pretty short period of time, and it seems to me it might slip. I don't know. I mean, there may have been something on Mac Rumors about that, actually, now to come to think of it. I didn't see it, but someone told me that there was a rumor that it may be slipping into early November, but who knows? I mean, those rumors, you take them for what they're worth.
Yeah, I mean, we did have, obviously, with was iOS 9, wasn't it? There really was just a short period between submission and release. So, I mean, maybe they'll just do the same with the Apple TV at some point and just go, oh, we're releasing it next week, by the way, and just wait for the submissions then.
Yeah, it's always interesting when that happens, because that's where you really realize that, notwithstanding the fact that supposedly all developers are created equal, they really aren't. I mean, there are, and nor should they really be, I think. I mean, the bigger development shops usually, they usually get hardware early. Here, a lot of people got the hardware, but oftentimes, it seems they get put at the front of the queue in terms of app review when there's a tight deadline like that, which, it's fine. They want to have the big apps on the store day one. It takes a little longer for some of the smaller developers to get in there.
Yeah, definitely. So do you want to tell me about this? You went to a gaming show, is that right, yesterday?
Yeah, I did. I mean, my youngest son's been wanting to go to something like PAX for a long time, and this was not PAX. It's called ValorCon. It was fine. It was not so much a video game convention where they announce anything. It was more of a players conference. They rented out one of the top floors of what is essentially a failed shopping mall in downtown Chicago. So there was a bunch of empty storefronts. And they had some talks, and they had a lot of space for playing various card games like Magic the Gathering, and they were playing D&D, and they had a video game section where they had some mostly Xbox 360s set up, some PCs with Minecraft and other games, and then they had some tournaments of some console games, like they had a Super Smash Brothers tournament going on, and Mario Maker, that sort of thing. It was okay. It wasn't what we had expected, so we stayed for a few hours, checked out things, went to a couple of the talks, one on Minecraft, and then another one on podcasting, which was kind of interesting just because, I'm familiar with, you hear a lot of podcasters talking about podcasting, but it's all from the podcasts that you listen to, and mine are mostly tech and Mac centric. And this was coming from the kind of a gamer's perspective. And it was, the advice and the ideas were very similar to what you've heard if you've listened to a lot of the podcasts in either Relay or 5x5 or something like that. But it seemed as though the gamers were mostly using Audacity instead of GarageBand for the recording or their editing of their podcast, which I've heard is kind of hard to use and has a bad UI, but it has the value of being free.
I guess it's probably expected because obviously with gaming for PC, 99% of that is happening on Windows rather than on the Mac. So obviously I don't know what the kind of GarageBand equivalent is for Windows. So I guess if Audacity works, then yeah, it's kind of expected.
Right. And the other thing I found a little bit interesting in terms of like promotion was, I guess a lot of gamers are on Google Plus, which I would not have guessed. And that's where you go to find gamers for podcasts, is you go to Google Plus and promote yourself there. So not something I need to do, but interesting to know. It's always good to keep in mind that different groups and crowds hang out in different places.
Yeah, I've always found that interesting to see, like, as you say, in our kind of tech bubble, we kind of think, nobody uses Google Plus, nobody uses this, everyone uses that. But kind of outside of that, there's these huge communities on other stuff like Google Plus and, just all these kind of other sites that maybe we don't even consider to use.
Yeah, the other thing, so that was this past weekend, or yesterday, but next week I am heading off to Release Notes, which is a conference in Indianapolis, Indiana, which I'm really looking forward to. I'm really
jealous of this one.
This one is great because it's practically in my backyard. I mean, that's like a 3-hour drive for me, which is not that bad. It starts on a Wednesday evening, so I'll probably take off mid-afternoon, drive down there. And it goes through Friday. And this is being run by Charles Perry and Joe Czaplinski, who do the Release Notes podcast, which is a development podcast based on and focused on the business side of things, not the code. And I think that is, I think that it's a great thing. There have been talks here and there at various conferences that touch on the business aspects, but having a whole conference dedicated to it, I think, is really nice. And there are going to be a lot of interesting people showing up and speaking. So looking forward to that, and hopefully have some good stories when we record next time.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to hearing that, because we've got, is it Mike Hurley's doing the opening keynote? Is that right?
Yeah, he is. Mike's doing that. I know Underscore is going to be there talking. Let's see, Jim Dalrymple. Trying to think. There are a number of people speaking, and then there are a lot of people who are attending. I know we've got a lot of iOS developers. I know. Let's see, Greg Pierce, who does drafts, is going to be there, and Marco Arment. I think Jason Snell is coming out for it. A bunch of people, so it should be interesting.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be a good couple of days.
Yep.
So do you want to talk a little bit about the stuff you've had with Log My Run, the app, one of the apps that you've got over at Scribner and BuzzFeed?
Yeah, this was kind of a weird thing, and I there are a couple of. I think it's just kind of anecdotally interesting as a developer. Log My Run is a running log app that my son Owen developed, and it's been on the store for quite a while. At least 3 or 4 years, and he's updated it from time to time. It's a very simple app, doesn't use GPS or anything like that. It's just really for someone who wants to keep a diary of their runs, and it makes it easy by pulling in the weather information automatically and having different fields for notes and pace, and calculates a lot of that automatically, and then creates graphs and things like that. So it's sells modestly well week to week, handful of copies a week at this point. Been kind of passed by a lot of the bigger name running apps, but it still has a decent following. And then all of a sudden one day I wake up and it's sold, I think 47 copies in a day. And I thought, this is strange. What's going on here? And I couldn't find any mention of it anywhere. Couldn't find anything on Twitter, couldn't find anything on the web. The next day I think it sold like 60 something copies. I thought, that's weird. Looking for what was going on, still couldn't just figure out what was happening. And then the next day it just tailed off before spiking even higher than either of the previous 2 days. So over the course of, 5 or 6 days, it sold about 225 copies. About halfway through that, I went through the Apple Analytics and iTunes Connect and saw an entry for Buzzfeed, and it said something, I'll get to the punchline about Buzzfeed in a minute, but it's like, oh, okay. So we went and looked, and there it was. Log My Run was in a listicle. It was like number 12 out of 15 tips for people who want to learn how to run.
So you've unlocked that achievement then, at least.
Yeah, yes, it is. We have one of our apps in a listicle, and I will put the awesome link in the show notes. Not a big fan of Buzzfeed. I mean, most of their articles are kind of junk. This was obvious. This was not something that we went out looking for. It wasn't that we did any marketing. It was just a stroke of lightning that hit. Some reporter somewhere was using it, liked it, and dropped it in an article, which is great. Problem is, it's not a repeatable thing. And two, I was amazed at how little Google juice BuzzFeed has. And I suppose this is probably by design, but I could not for the life of me, until I searched BuzzFeed and Log My Run, I could not come up with the app. Couldn't come up with the article. It was completely invisible to me until I saw the reference to it in the analytics. Now, the other thing about this that's kind of interesting is that the analytics for iOS that they have in iTunes Connect still are not very good. I mean, part of it is that a lot of the stuff in there is opt-in. And so a lot of people it's not capturing everybody's data. And just to give people, this is, obviously just one instance, but as I said, there were about 220 sales. I think the analytics said there were 10. So it just barely registered strongly enough to show up in the analytics. And the actual sales were about 20x the actual sale. Not 20x, 10x the actual sales. 20x. My math is not good today, Rob.
20x sounds about right. So to clarify this, am I right in thinking that the iTunes Connect analytics are directly linked to the give developers feedback or whatever it is when you set up an iPhone? Is that right? Not feedback, like analytics and data from my phone, that kind of thing. Is that related to that?
This, I think it is not actually, because it's tracking what's traffic to the store coming from a website. Some of the analytics are. This one is not. But I'm not, and I don't understand why this is. It clearly showed far more hits to the App Store than sales, which is what you expect. People check it out and they don't necessarily buy it. But the actual sales it was recording were extremely low compared to reality. So I'm not sure what's going on there. It's just not. I mean, at that kind of differential between reality and what was reported, it's really not useful. It was useful in the sense that it helped me find where this traffic was coming from, since I couldn't find it anywhere else. But beyond that, it didn't give me any sense. It didn't really record reality. So
I would say, off the top of my head, the first thought I maybe had is, kind of when you open a link in, say, Tweetbot in a web view or like Safari View Controller, and then that opens to the App Store. Maybe you open it in Safari to get it to work and things like that. I guess it's possible maybe that the referrer is being lost between those two stages. So you're in an app, you click a link, and then it opens in Safari to then open in the iTunes Store. That would be my first thought, that maybe the referrer data is being lost in between two apps somewhere before it actually hits the App Store.
Yeah, that makes sense. Two, we've got the BuzzFeed, I think. Those are, a lot of times those articles tend to be those articles you see at the bottom of some like Yahoo News or something, where they try to get you to click on them. And maybe that's exactly that kind of situation, that there aren't as many people going directly to BuzzFeed to click on an article as there are people who see it in a sidebar and say, oh, I'd like to be a runner, and click there, and it gets lost on its way to the App Store somehow.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe that's what's happening. I mean, obviously, I've no idea of the internal workings of iTunes Connect or their analytics.
Nobody does, Rob. That's part of the problem.
Does anyone at Apple? Probably not.
At Apple, yes, but not outside. It was just interesting, just kind of an interesting story. It was one of those things too, where my first thought was, how do you capitalize on this? And one thought was to put the app on sale, but decided not to, because people are out who are not getting to the app via a means other than Buzzfeed weren't going to really know it's on sale. It struck me that it wasn't going to do anything other than bring in less revenue, and that wasn't really too attractive. Go ahead.
And I guess in some way that because you didn't know kind of until a couple of delays in that at least where the traffic was coming from, by that point you've already made loads of sales, or in this case, substantially more than you usually would. So
right.
I assume by the time you've dropped the price, you probably lose a lot of that benefit anyway.
Right. I mean, I guess arguably what it could have done, dropping the price, what might have made it more likely that some of those Buzzfeed people would buy it instead of just take a pass. But it's a $2 app, by the way. So I suppose that's possible. Decided it wasn't really worth doing that. I'm fairly stingy with running sales. I think you more often than not just undercut your own business doing that.
Yeah, I'm not sure that. I guess maybe the sales do work if you're talking kind of, say, like a 90% discount. If you're talking like a $10 game or something, then yeah, that's probably going to drive more traffic. But I think under that kind of $4 or $5 mark, if you're under there, I'm not convinced that a sale is going to really drive enough traffic to, or enough sales to make it worthwhile.
Right. This one was a little bit on the edge for me in terms of whether it would make any difference. I think it makes a difference when it's like you said, like a game where you've got a really big market, and you're drawing the attention of thousands of people, and you might grab, exponentially more buyers if you put it on sale. But if you've got more of a niche app, I don't think that necessarily makes a lot of sense.
No, definitely not.
What it does do, I guess, is juice your rankings. It's interesting to watch the rankings because in the health and fitness, at one point, Log My Run got up to about number 42, which is pretty high, but it dropped like a rock very quickly. I mean, you get a lot of views and a lot of purchases in a short period of time, and it shoots you up the rankings pretty quickly. But as soon as those start trailing off, you start dropping very quickly.
Yeah, I wonder how high up you really need to be up that list to sustain it. And again, if it's kind of a specific genre of app, health and fitness, that's again like kind of one tap further away than like the main top list. And I wonder how many people are browsing those specific categories.
I would suspect very few. I mean, I think it makes a big difference if you can get into the top paid or top grossing. Maybe the top 20 or 40. I think it's maybe 25 that show when you open the app. If you open that list, if you're on your phone, it shows about the top 20 or so. That's the magic number. I think once you're up there, it'll sustain itself. But people, you're right. I mean, I don't think very many people go clicking into the categories, then from the categories into the lists. So I don't think that being in the top 40 is definitely not going to help you. Being in the top 10 or 20, maybe. But I think overall you really need to get into the aggregate lists that collect all the apps, and that is exceedingly difficult these days.
I mean, I occasionally kind of look into the category top list. I'll pick kind of utilities or a similar category to that, trying to just see what's available, because the normal top charts is just filled with games and things like that I'm not interested in. And something like utilities particularly is completely useless, because the top 20 for the most part is just filled with torch apps. I mean, how are they still at the top of the charts? I've no idea.
It's amazing to me that stuff is still in there. It made a lot of sense when the App Store first opened. There were two kinds of apps when the store first opened. There were people who created the flashlight apps, which were really just a white view with a button, which I think, if I remember right, even there was something along those lines in the sample code that originally came out with the first iPhone OS. And the other category were things like Twitterific, which were made by people who were veteran Mac developers who could pick up on iOS very quickly because they knew Cocoa. Everything else was, I think, mostly, fart apps and flashlights.
Yeah, and I think there's actually still a huge market for that kind of stuff still. I mean, like I say, every time I look in a specific category's top list, there's always these kind of apps that either seem completely useless or have been replaced by system functions. I mean, the flashlight app, we've got a torch now built into Control Center, and you see these ones that are like warm your hands up, and it's just like an app that shows a fireplace. And these things sit at the top of the charts for months and months and months.
Yeah, do you remember the drink a pint ones where it looked, it would tilt and it would look like you were drinking beer?
That's probably still hands down the best app that's ever been released. Just so much fun.
Yes, until you realize you're not actually drinking a beer and you'd rather just have a real beer.
Yeah. I think what was good about that app was we hadn't really had phones that had accelerometers and things like that in it. So it truly was a great example of what could be done.
Right. It was. Yeah, it was a great demo. It was a real novelty at the time.
I want to talk about something a little bit more negative about Apple now. Signing up to Apple Music has destroyed a significant amount of my music collection, and I'm not very happy.
I saw your tweets about this. I mean, what's going on? I've had some issues and problems along the way, but for the most part, it's sorted itself out.
Yeah, so if I just go through the chain of events that's happened to get me to this point, it might kind of explain a little bit better what happened. So I signed up for the Apple Music trial. I thought, 3 months, I'll try it out, see if I like it. After about a month or so, it's not for me. Streaming doesn't really work the way I listen to music. So I went into iTunes on the Mac and iOS and hid Apple Music from all the options and menus and stuff. So I couldn't see Apple Music anywhere, which is great. It kind of it fixes the music app on iOS definitely. It makes it a lot nicer to use.
You get a playlists tab then, don't you?
Yeah, it adds a playlist tab instead of music. I think you can also turn off iTunes Connect as well, which I've done.
You mean iTunes Music Library or like iCloud Music Library?
No. What's the Apple Music Connect is what I'm thinking of. Sorry.
Oh,
the following the Twitter type thing that they've got for ours. So I've turned all this off. But what I did like about having Apple Music again, or having Apple Music, was that, my playlist would sync between my phone and my Mac and stuff like that. And I thought, what, I'll sign up to iTunes Match. So I think it's like £22 a year. I thought, iTunes Match, that'll be perfect. That kind of syncs all my music across between the two devices, playlists, and all of that kind of stuff. That's great. And obviously the good thing about iTunes Match, allegedly, is that, I can kind of delete some songs, or I can only have the songs that I want to keep on, my Mac or on my iPhone and stuff like that. So I can save space by just leaving them in the cloud.
Right.
So that was all working fine. And I deleted a load of compilation albums that I had because I don't really listen to them all too often. I just listen to kind of the odd song that's in a playlist. My Apple Music subscription ended, I guess, probably last week or the week before. I guess that was probably the case for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And a significant number of these songs that are supposed to be in iTunes Match had converted themselves to Apple Music tracks, so I could no longer listen to them.
Right.
So I tried to play them and it'd say, sign into Apple Music to listen to this song, and I'm like, but this is a song that I had. This was nothing to do with Apple Music.
Right.
So it seems what's happened is because I had both at the same time, the tracks that went up into iTunes Match, some of them, iTunes or Apple decided that these are actually Apple Music tracks and not tracks that I own that I should be able to re-download.
Right.
So I got on support with Apple, and I'm not entirely convinced the person I was talking to understood firstly, I didn't understand what I'd done, and then didn't really understand why I would have done it. I don't think it was very obvious that I deleted the songs to save space. And basically the only response from Apple was, well, you deleted the original files, so you need to re-upload them, which obviously is not... that's not an option, because I deleted them to save space, so I don't have the original files.
Were these songs that these aren't songs that you bought from iTunes, I assume, right?
No, most of the compilations I've got are stuff that I've ripped from CDs that I had, maybe 10 years ago or something like that.
Okay.
I don't have the CDs anymore. It's possible I have a backup of the tracks somewhere. It's not the end of the world. I can buy the songs or find the backup or something. But yeah, their response was just, well, you need to re-upload the original file, which obviously I now don't have on my Mac.
Yeah, I think one of the big issues with Apple Music these days is the difference between how iTunes Match works, how the iTunes world works and how the Apple Music world works, because they're really two different things. Their catalogs aren't the same. I mean, you can, and believe me, I have delved into this dealing with my app Blink, and it was a nightmare because some things are in the catalog, the iTunes catalog, some things are in the Apple Music catalog. There's a lot of overlap, but they're not the same. So there's issues like that. It's not clear because everything is in the same app. You kind of assume that all these services and everything are working together, hand in hand, but they're not really doing that. I do kind of wonder. I've used iTunes Match for a very long time, and I was going to discontinue it, and I was a little worried that it would do something awful now that I'm on Apple Music. And it's, I've got the opposite of what you had. Instead of signing up for Apple iTunes Match after Apple Music, I signed up for it before, and so what you're saying makes me wonder whether now a lot of my Match stuff is considered Apple Music, and if I cancel iTunes Match, then I'll be fine as long as I'm Music. But then if I go back, I may be in a bind.
Yeah, it's very confusing. It's very confusing. I think the biggest problem they have in terms of the user-facing functions of both these services, Apple Music and iTunes Match, is Apple Music uses or can use, was it iCloud Music Library? Is that right? Or is it,
right.
Yeah. So you have iCloud Music Library, which is the feature that syncs those between your Mac and your iOS devices and things like that. If you sign up to iTunes Match, there's nothing else in the UI. Once you sign up, there's nothing else that says iTunes Match. iTunes Match uses iCloud Music Library.
Yes.
But it uses it clearly in a completely different way, because iTunes Match does a lot of different things to what Apple Music has. But from a user perspective, if I wasn't the kind of person that followed along with this stuff, I would have had no idea how iTunes Match was even working.
Yeah, I think maybe part of the problem is that iTunes Match used to do more than it does now, in a sense, and maybe that's, Apple Music has kind of taken over the access to your music library in the cloud to some degree. There's still matching going on, especially for things that wouldn't be in Apple Music. But it seems almost as though Apple Music is the default. If you've got Apple Music on, it's going to try to find your stuff in Apple Music. If it doesn't find it there, then it goes to Match or Cloud if you've subscribed to that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as I say, I've probably got a backup somewhere, and if I haven't, I can just buy these songs. I mean, you're talking like CDs that I had when I was 13, 14, 15. So, I've had them these ripped MP3s I've had for kind of 10 years or so, and yeah, it's annoying that I've lost them, but assuming I can work out which tracks have been kind of corrupted and disappeared, I'll just buy them or find the backups or something like that.
Yeah, if you could find a backup of your iTunes Music Library, you can just drill down through those folders and you should be able to. I mean, maybe you just import it all back in and have a bunch of duplicates and then use. There's a way to cull duplicates from iTunes on a Mac and do it that way. That might work.
Yeah, I'm definitely good. I need to sit down and kind of work out a way to find out which tracks are corrupt and which ones aren't, because right now, like, there's no obvious way. It just kind of happens when I hit a particular song. But it's not the end of the world. It's just kind of, more than anything else, just something to be aware of if you're using both services.
Yeah, well, the problem is now it's a project. You've got to spend probably at least a few hours dealing with it, which is not the way it should be. One good resource, I would suggest to anybody listening, Serenity Caldwell has done a lot of work with Apple Music and iTunes Connect, or not iTunes Connect. I just did the same thing you did. iTunes Cloud Music Library, whatever it's called. She's done a lot of good articles over on iMore that when I was dealing with Apple Music, because I did the thing where I signed up for iTunes Music family plan. One of my kids signed up for iTunes Music, and the way it worked is you couldn't move them over into the family plan until their free trial expired, which just seems ludicrous to me. But that one, it did kind of automatically happen because he was already on family sharing, and then setting up family sharing is a whole nother can of worms. I got it to work. But I waited weeks to do that and talked to a bunch of people and read a bunch of articles before I did it, because I knew that it was a recipe for disaster. Had heard a lot of horror stories. So anytime you go into one of those cloud services for the media, I think you have to be really careful on what you're doing. And I think Serenity's articles are some of the best in terms of giving you some insight as to how everything's working and how to set it up without doing something that messes up your library.
Yeah, Dev, Serenity, I think, actually manages to write any how-to article I ever search for. I always end up on a Serenity Caldwell article. She's just unstoppable.
It's definitely her specialty.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're going to talk about podcast apps too, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we've had a couple of good updates and releases this week. Do you want to start us off, Jeff?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the two apps I wanted to mention were the update to Overcast, the 2.0 that came out, and the Relay FM app. I've loved Overcast since it came out. For me, the smart speed and voice boost are key features, as well as the fast downloads and flexible organizing of the shows. I had tried a bunch of apps before I tried Overcast. None of them were quite right for me, and it's just one of those situations where Overcast struck a chord with how I listen to shows, and it was great when it came out. Now, one of the biggest features of Overcast 2.0 is streaming, which is amazingly fast. You just if something is not downloaded and you tap it, it starts almost immediately, which I was very impressed with. I don't use streaming a lot. I just download my shows, but I found myself this past week coming in on the train for work, and I got a notification that upgrade had been posted. It was the one that Mike and Jason talked about, the new iMacs. So instead of coming out kind of the normal time, upgrade would be uploaded. It came out early in the morning for me. So I was on the train and hadn't downloaded all the way yet. And I just tapped it and started listening. And it continues to download in the background. So it was only maybe, it saves me a few minutes, but at most. But it was nice to just be able to go in and start listening as soon as it came down the pipe and not have to wait till it fully downloaded, because I saw that it was going to talk about the Retina iMacs, and I wanted to get Jason's take on that right away.
Yeah, to a couple of your points, smart speed and voice boost, as you say, those are killer features for me. I just checked a minute ago, and Overcast has saved me something like 55 hours so far since I've had it in kind of the last year. Which 55 hours. That's 55 extra hours of podcasts I've been able to listen to. Basically, that's kind of extra time to me. Overcast has given me the gift of time, which really is it's just such a good feature.
Yeah, I'm at 82 hours now. So
wow, you're listening to a few more than me.
Yeah, and it gives you the time to listen to more. I still don't have enough time to listen to everything I want to. It seems like I always have some sort of backlog. At least the drive down to release notes next week, I'll have about 3 hours there and back to kind of get caught up on stuff. But yeah, that to me is a killer feature. And the thing that's amazing about it is it really doesn't in a meaningful way impact the listening at all. It does. I mean, it sounds good. It doesn't sound sped up. It doesn't sound artificial.
No, I mean, I think the only time I hear it occasionally is if there's music on a podcast, and you've got every now and again it kind of messes that up. But for an extra 50, 60, 70 hours of time, then that's fine by me. It really just is. For me, it is the best podcast app. I mean, like you, I had tried other ones, Castro and Pocket Casts. And, if Overcast hasn't got a feature that somebody wants, then, Pocket Casts or Castro or some of these other apps, they are fantastic apps. But for me, like, Smart Speed is the feature that I care about the most.
Yeah, and I guess the other feature of Overcast, the one that has been the subject of much drama and teeth gnashing on the internet this week, is the fact that the app's free now, including the Smart Speed and Voice Boost, which used to cost was an in-app purchase of $5. The entire app is free, and Marco's using a patronage model to ask people to donate $1 a month, which in my mind is well worth the price. Happy to pay it because I use that app probably more than just about anything other than maybe Twitter, and it's right up there in terms of the usage for me. And I think it's an interesting model. I think it works really well for an app like this because this is an app with a really broad-based user base. I think Marco announced last week that he's got 500,000 people using it now, which is amazing. And if he only gets a small percentage of them donating to him, he'll do just fine, I think. I've thought about using a patronage model before for Blink and other things, but it just doesn't work for productivity and niche apps that don't have a huge audience. But I think if you've got an app like Overcast or Pedometer++ that just about anybody might want to use, it's a good model.
Yeah, it's definitely. Well, I mean, it works for me. I mean, Overcast kind of put the options in, and I was quite, more than happy to pay. And as you mentioned, Pedometer++ is another one. Every now and again, I'll kind of just go in and leave a tip or what is it? Tip, I think, is the phrasing he uses in the app.
Yep.
But as you say, it's not a model that's going to work for. I mean, maybe it would work, but it's not necessarily going to work for a brand new app, or as you say, something like Blink, which is a niche app. It certainly doesn't have huge broad appeal across the App Store.
Right.
But it'd be interesting to see if he stays with this model, or maybe if he tries something new next year. But it's just interesting to see something, an app with this many users. Trying a different model and not being scummy about it.
Right. What's interesting to me is I don't know of any app that has done this, but I wonder whether you could do a paid app with a patronage model on top, or a tip jar type model where if you do a major update, instead of charging or creating a new app and all the things that go along with that, which are not positive, going out and letting your diehard users know that you'd appreciate a tip because you've put in a lot of work to it, some new features that they all appreciate. I don't know. I tend to think that wouldn't work, but it's something I've thought about a lot.
Yeah, again, I mean, I think Unread do that, the RSS reader from Supertop. I think they have a tip model, and I can't remember if they're a paid app or not at this point. But again, I think something like that, if you're looking for kind of patronage and kind of voluntary donations where you're not really getting anything back for your money, you're just supporting the developer, I do think you probably need a fairly large audience to be able to make that happen.
Yep. No, totally agreed. Although what I'm suggesting is perhaps there's a way to just get a little incremental revenue regardless, but I don't know. like I said, it's not. I just looked. Unread is a free app.
Oh, okay. So they do actually have the Overcast similar kind of model then, I think. So and the other app that got released this week was the Relay FM app. John, do you want to tell us a little bit about this?
Sure. This is it's for podcasts, but it doesn't really compete with existing podcast apps, and on purpose, because it's meant to solve a very narrow problem, which is listening to live shows. And I really enjoy listening to live shows. It's not, and many of my favorite podcasts are already on Relay, and I really enjoy kind of listening in as the shows are recorded when I can, which is not that often, but maybe once or twice a week. I find myself either commuting or with a little free time, and I can listen into all or part of a show, and I really enjoy doing that. The app starts off the stream very, very quickly. The connection stays real solid for the length of the show. The design, I think, is phenomenal. Frank Towers has outdone himself once again. I can't stop gushing about Frank's work. I mean, he does amazing show art for Relay, and it's pretty neat if you want to stream one of these recent shows. It's got some nice animations of the show art available here. And what's interesting about this app, I think, just from a technical side of things, is this is all WebKit. This is all, it's basically a web app. Although I guess you would call it a native web app, because it's not connecting to Safari or Safari View Controller, but what it is it's WebKit built in here, which allows these guys to update the information in the app on the fly in real time without submitting a new version of the app, which is really attractive, especially when you're generating as much content as they are. Yeah,
it's fairly interesting. Before I get into that, as you say, Frank Towers' artwork is amazing. He did one recently for Mike at the Movies, which is kind of a sub podcast of sorts. If anyone hasn't seen that, it's Mike Hurley talking with either Casey Lewis or Jason Snell about movies, and they've kind of extracted those out from Upgrade and Analog and put those into a podcast, and the artwork for that is just fantastic.
Yeah, I really like that. You can find that over in The Incomparable. That's where that one lives, but the artwork on that one really is amazing.
So, as you say, it's fairly interesting that the app can kind of be remotely updated without waiting for an app store update, and they're using, I believe, is it TapJet? They're using for the app.
Yes, that was a Kickstarter project that started out its life by the name of Glide. Chris Harris is one of the developers involved in this, and this has been in the works for a long time. I remember I met Chris for the first time at UL in 2011 in Dublin, and he had I forget the name of the app he had. It was a BBC show, I think, about space that he had done an app for, and he was showing that off, and it was kind of one of those moments where you're just blown away by the animations and how the app worked. And he, at that time, was already starting to think about extracting kind of the framework for how that works into something that he could sell as a subscription to others who wanted to put their content on the iOS store.
Yeah, this kind of remotely updating app, it's a problem that, certainly something we've discussed at work with me and kind of the other devs and stuff, because we have a hybrid kind of web and native app. Essentially it is a web app, but it's wrapped in a native wrapper, and we distribute that to iOS and Android. And the biggest problem we have is if we fix a bug or add a new feature, Android, we can have that in the store within 30 minutes. iOS, we could be waiting, anywhere up to 2 weeks or something. And this kind of remote updating, I think really is quite appealing to, especially, again, something like Relay, where they probably do want to be out, to the widest audience they can, and get that content updated as soon as possible to make sure that people can access everything. So it's an interesting concept, and I think in the next few years we'll probably see a lot more apps doing this. I mean, I know my banking app in the UK does this. They don't advertise it or anything, but it's fairly obvious that is what they're doing. And I think a lot more kind of bigger companies that just need kind of the same app on all the platforms. We'll probably start doing this a lot more in the future.
Right. It works. What it reminds me of a little bit is how a Jekyll website works. Something that where you can just drop, as I understand it, you just drop the content into Dropbox folders to make this work.
Yeah, there is services that. So Jekyll is kind of a build system, and it takes Markdown files and outputs HTML. And yeah, as you say, there's a few services that will allow you to do that through Dropbox and Google Drive and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a fairly good analogy to what's happening here.
Yeah, the developer in me looks at it and I can see the WebKit, but I don't think most people will notice that this is not a custom app because I can see where the constraints are and where the limitations are, because there's definitely limitations and constraints when your entire app is built on just one framework like WebKit, but they've really taken it as far as you possibly can, and I think I don't think these constraints are really getting in the way of this app, because I think it does everything that they needed it to do and does it very well. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I think the biggest example of this kind of hybrid kind of app is Facebook's app. They use React Native for that, which is JavaScript, to write all of their UI and stuff like that, and React Native kind of uses native components, but it's powered by JavaScript. And Facebook's obviously one of the biggest apps in the App Store, and it means that they can remotely update it, and a lot of the newsfeed and stuff like that they can remotely update and things like that. So yeah, I think in the next few years we're going to see a lot more, because Apple have also explicitly said that this is okay in the guidelines.
Do you think that Facebook's use of JavaScript and all that remote updating is part of what's crushing people's batteries?
I don't think so, because I've had a little bit of a play around with React Native, and without writing a lot of native components, I don't think they would have access to be able to mess up the battery in the way that they do. I personally think that we're probably not going to get too far into this, but personally I think they're doing it on purpose, the background battery killing. I think they are using the audio API in ways that they shouldn't be, to keep the app open so that they can update the newsfeed and stuff like that. But yeah.
Yeah, no, that battery stuff, that that's something that was faced back in iOS 1 or 2. I'm amazed that someone's using that now and getting away with it, potentially.
Well, I mean, it's Facebook, and I don't think Apple want an app store without Facebook on there.
I think it's interesting.
I think this is the biggest problem, is Apple, if it was somebody else, maybe Apple would pull the app, but the iPhone becomes a much less appealing proposition to a lot of people if it doesn't have a Facebook app.
Well, my guess is they'll change the API to break it. I mean, you saw what Twitter was doing. At one point, Twitter was using URL schemes to basically ping an enormous list of URL schemes against what was on a phone, and make a database of what was installed on a phone, and then use it to serve advertising to people, which is an abuse of the URL scheme system. So that was changed for iOS 9 to make that harder.
Yeah, definitely. Let's get onto something that obviously is far more important than apps and the App Store and things like this. The UK plastic bag chaos, as it's been called.
Yes, this is this is hard-hitting news, and it's an important subject for everybody in the UK, I know, and we've actually had some experience with this here in Chicago area as well. Although we've taken a little different tact on it. Yeah,
I'm coping, John. I know you've been worried, but I am okay. Everything's all right. So for anyone who maybe doesn't know, the UK on last Monday, I think it was Monday the 5th, all retailers now, or all large retailers, supermarkets and shops, things like that, have to charge 5p for any plastic bags that you use. Now, that seems perfectly reasonable. The thinking is, if you're being charged for them, then maybe you'll just reuse bags and, bring your own, in a hope to reduce plastic bag usage. And this has been trialled in Scotland and Wales, or not trialled, it is running and has been for a few years in those in those places, and it's been absolutely fine. It's reduced bag usage and waste and all this kind of stuff. And the media in this country they just completely lost it on the day that it happened. You know, the headline front page story was plastic bag chaos expected and things like this. Of course, in reality, that's not the case, and it hasn't really affected anybody too much.
Yeah, no, I definitely have to get the pictures of these headlines in the show notes because I thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what this must look like to somebody outside of the UK. I mean, I expect this kind of stuff, but I mean, this is why the world thinks we're ridiculous.
Well, you wonder sometimes it's no wonder that why there's so much drama on Twitter sometimes when you realize everybody's like this. People get up in arms about silly stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely. I felt the funniest story for me, and I'm not 100% sure what newspaper this is in because it's just a screenshot on Twitter or a photo on Twitter. It's an article in a personal finance section of a newspaper, and it says to beat the bag charge, just say no and bring your own.
Right, which is the whole point of it anyway, right?
Yeah, as if you're you're sticking it to the man by by bringing your own bags. And you see this, this is exactly what they want you to do. Like, this is the whole point of the system.
All right, you've just been played. The bags are 5 pence, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, which is like, I did the conversion. That's like 8 cents US. So it's not something to really get up in arms about, in my opinion. But I thought the articles were funny. I did learn that people shop at Tesco, or is it Tesco or Tasco?
Tesco, yeah.
Tesco are cheap because they started stealing the baskets, right?
Yeah, this is just madness. I mean, I don't even know what I'm supposed to say to this, but yes, rather than paying 5p, people are stealing the shopping baskets so that they don't have to pay for a bag. I also saw another example when I was in my local Tesco. There was the man and a woman in front of me doing their weekly shopping by the looks of it. Or maybe not weekly, but they had probably a bag or two's worth of stuff. Would not pay for the bags, and they were kind of balancing everything, and the woman was like hooking the milk onto her little finger so that she could carry it all out. And I'm just kind of thinking, this is crazy. Like, just either bring bags or just pay for one.
Yeah, there's better ways to save money, I guess. Well, we have a similar thing in Chicago that it started over the summer, where it's those thin, those real thin bags that they're trying to get rid of, because I guess something like 3 to 5% of them end up as litter and blow around the city. So they banned those from Chicago, and instead of charging people money for them, you can either buy like a real heavy duty bag. A lot of grocery stores will have like a dollar, and it'd be a recycled, some sort of like nylon plasticky bag that's real sturdy, and they usually cost about $1 a piece. And a lot of grocery stores would give you a couple free, depending on how much you spent, to try to kind of build up the supply of these with the customers. But the whole thing has backfired a little bit because it was okay. The only bags that were banned were the real thin ones. Thicker bags were not. So Walmart and places like that in downtown Chicago just started using really heavy duty plastic bags. So now those are blowing around the city.
Right. So they haven't actually solved any of the problems then, by the sounds of it.
No, I mean, I went to a NS Coder night in Chicago about a week and a half ago, and it was kind of a BYOB pizza thing, and people did a few talks about apps they're working on. And there was a liquor store right nearby where it was being done, and I went in and got some beer, and they gave me this enormous, heavy paper bag. I was like, well, it just. Which was really hard to carry and a pain compared to what you normally get. So it was, that's what you're getting. You're either getting a really heavy paper bag or you're getting a thick plastic bag. And then other places that normally carried paper bags for their groceries already, they're just continuing to use those. So I don't know that it's amounted to much, but it caused apparently a lot of confusion in Chicago too.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe, this is one of the big differences, I think, between the US and the UK. We don't have paper bags for groceries like anywhere. Every single supermarket and places like that all use plastic bags. Like I think some of the clothes shops that they use kind of paper bags, but they do have a handle on them, so they're pretty good. But in terms of groceries, like everywhere just does plastic bags. So I think that's probably why they introduced the charge more than just banning them.
Right.
I was looking on this Time Out article, which is part of the Chicago section of the site. And, it does kind of look like the panic was maybe a little bit the same. I'm seeing question, what can I do to prepare? I know. As if this is kind of like a genuine like life or death situation in terms of what to do.
What is hard is if you go to some place that doesn't have the paper bags and you have to bring your own bags. I know people who live in the city who will go shopping on the way home from work, and it's a pain if you do that, because then you got to bring your bags to work and carry them with them to the grocery store. It's a little bit of a hassle, but not that big a deal.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's a situation that requires preparation too much. Just remember bags. Though that's the number one top tip there, I think.
Yep.
So do you want to tell me about? We've got a little section in here about stuff we're enjoying. You've got a couple of items in here, John.
Sure, Rob. One thing, a week ago, The Walking Dead restarted. I love this show. It's interesting. If you go back, it's on, at least in the U.S., it's on Netflix all the way through last season. And if you look at the early ones, they really had to rely pretty heavily on the story because they didn't have big budgets, and so the special effects weren't great. I think season 2 is a little weak, but every season since then I've really enjoyed, and I think we're on season 6 now. I think that just started. And now they've got a really good story and a big budget. So the special effects are pretty good. And I really enjoyed the premiere episode. I guess it was a week ago, and there's another one on tonight. This is one of those few shows that I actually will buy in iTunes because I can't watch it the night it airs, but I can watch it the next night. And that way I don't have to, it's got a nice high quality version without any commercials. That's the way I like to watch it.
Yeah, definitely. It's not something that I've watched, but I have heard good things about it, and I agree with it. It's nice when a show manages to grab a big budget and kind of improve.
Yep. The other two things I'd mention is the Top 4 podcast, which is done by Tiff Arment and Marco Arment. They just talk about their top 4 of various things. The most recent one is their top 4 favorite podcasts. They actually talk about a lot more than just their top 4. And it's just, I think it's a well done show and kind of interesting to see what they enjoy, and good way to discover new things. And then finally, Mike Hurley got me hooked on this game called Domino Drop, which is a little bit like Tetris, I suppose, but it's dominoes dropping down. And it's a combination of dominoes and white squares. And the white squares is what makes it tough, because you cannot eliminate a series of white squares until you have 4 of them touching each other. And then the actual domino pieces, they break when you get the same color and number touching each other, and as they break, it's one of those games where it's like Tetris in that it fills up a container up to the top, and when you get to the top, you're done. And it's just one of those that's kind of fun to fiddle around with. It's a quick game kind of thing. You can, if you're tired and just have nothing to do, spend a little time playing Domino Drop. I think it's like $2 on the store or something like that.
Yeah, I'm just having a look at it now. It looks like a lot of fun, actually. So we'll drop a link in the show notes for that.
How about you, Rob? Do you have anything?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. Bird Brain app. A few people have been talking about this recently. It's been out in the store for a while, and you link it to your Twitter account, and it keeps track of new followers and followers that have people that have unfollowed you on Twitter, mentions, retweets, all that kind of stuff. Gives you the option to kind of see people who follow you that you don't follow, or the other way around, or people that do follow you back that you follow, that kind of thing. It's just nice to kind of get a little bit of information about how the numbers are going up and down, kind of followers and things like that. So that's quite a nice little app just to keep track of that stuff.
No, that's good. I think I maybe did hear about that somewhere, but I had forgotten about it. I definitely want to download this. Seems kind of an interesting thing. Of course, when I do a search, first thing that comes up is something called Bird Brain Escape from Rio de Janeiro.
Yeah, that's not the same thing, John. No, don't download that.
This second result is the right one. Bird Brain Statistics for Twitter.
Yep, that's the one.
And that's $3 US.
So the other app that I wanted to talk about is an app called Gitify, and this is a menu bar app to get your GitHub notifications. GitHub, if you sign up for an account as standard, GitHub will email you every notification you get, and that can get a little bit crazy, especially if, like me and our team at work, we use GitHub all day. So if there's a long conversation going on, I'm going to be getting emails coming through all day long. And I was using an app called The Hub, but there's a bug in El Capitan where it will continually show that you've got a new notification in even when you haven't. So while I was actually looking for something else related to work, I found this app, and it funnily enough, links quite nicely into what we were talking about before. It's actually an app built with JavaScript, but it runs as a native app in the menu bar, and I've been testing it for 2 or 3 days now, and it works really well. So if you do use GitHub and you get a lot of notifications, it's definitely worth checking that out, and we'll put a link in the show notes to it.
All right, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to actually recommend an article too that I saw Federico Vitici tweet last night, and now I'm not finding where it is, but we'll get it in the show notes. It was a GQ article about Taylor Swift, and I'm not a huge Taylor Swift fan. I do enjoy Taylor Swift, I will admit that, but what was interesting about the article, and I think it's applicable to a lot of anybody who's got projects and trying to make a go of it. It's all about her hard work and skill and how she's been able to parlay that into the success she's had. I mean, I think it's a timely article for people to read.
Yeah, definitely. I read some of that. I put it in Instapaper to get back to it. But yeah, it's definitely was an interesting article from what I've read. So yeah, we'll pop that in the show notes as well. So the last thing I wanted to mention, if people are listening and they like the show, if you could review us in iTunes, that would be great. Because I think right now we don't have any, as far as I know. If we could get a couple of those, that'd be great. So where can people find you then, John, online?
Probably the best place is Twitter at John Voorhees. That's JohnVoorHees. Or you can check out my apps and Owen's apps at squibner.com.
Okay, and you can find me at roblewis.me, or my Twitter account is rmlewisuk. And we will be back in a couple of weeks.
Great. Let's talk to you then.
See you later, John.